Welcome to my last video in the series Product Analytics 101 for product managers at B2B startups. Thank you for bearing with me. Today we are here at feature adoption and retention. Firstly, it bears repeating, delivery of a feature is another experiment, and launch data is a test result. Ideally test result with pretty strong evidence strength. It's a pretty expensive test to run, which of course depends on how much data you've actually collected over which time frame. But it is a test result. So it seems kind of obvious that we should be looking at feature engagement, so adoption and retention metrics, to decide our next steps. I think a lot of product managers get stuck at the question how. So in this video, I want to talk about two frameworks or ways that you can do that. And I want to start with TARS, which I think I found once on Reforge, and it helped me quite a lot. So TARS stands firstly for target population, that's a T, and it's telling you should first define your target population for a feature. So ask yourself, what problem does this feature solve, right? And who is facing that problem? If you've done product management right, in my perspective, you will have findings from maybe discovery or validation methods that you've done in the past, or you can look at historic user data. There's something you can point at that will help you define that target audience. For example, a feature can be targeted at a specific ICP. For example, if you're a fintech and you have a dashboard for companies where they can log in and they can see their transaction data, this might be geared more towards SMEs who like to log into your tool and watch that data. And you might also have a public API that can be called, and maybe larger companies are more likely to implement that API and pull your data into their own custom built systems, right? So you have different solutions for different ICPs. Or you might have different features for different roles. Let's imagine you are a task management solution or like a project management solution. And then you might expect that your project managers and their team members are using the task management features, but maybe not the account owners. Maybe the account owners are doing something different in your product. Or, for example, you might build a feature that is meant specifically for existing users to kind of discover later on in their life cycle. So it's not something that you show in new user onboarding, but something that you show much later on in continued onboarding. So these are just some examples of features being meant for a specific subsegment of your users. So that's about defining the target population. And then we have the A, which is about calculating adopt, which is about looking at which share of that target population has used the feature at least once, has tried it, adopted it. And the next one is about retaining, which is looking at this segment of people who have adopted it. How many of those kind of keep coming back? And this is quite tough already, right? This is just as tough as user retention. How often do you expect your target audience to use this feature, which is very much related to how often they probably incur the problem that the feature is set to solve. And another way to phrase is to ask, what is the natural frequency of any solution to a problem of this nature? So you need to define that upfront, right? And then the S stands for satisfy, satisfaction. Often missed. Often we only look at how often people are using the feature, but even when they're using it, they might hate it, right? They might just be forced to use it. So satisfaction is also very important. So how satisfied is your target audience with this feature? And a good way to find out is, for example, popping up a one-question survey in the app while they're using the feature, after they're using the feature, just asking them to rate it on a 5-star rating, for example. Or you can find out by doing user interviews. But this is important, not to be missed. Now, another framework that I quite like is kind of this matrix. I think I took this from a Pendo course one day, and I use it quite a lot. So you draw a matrix, you have a y-axis that goes from high retention to low retention, and you have this x-axis that goes from low adoption to high adoption. And then you can kind of plot your features in these quadrants, right? By looking at detailed feature reports and seeing how well they are adopted and retained. For example, the B2B SaaS product analytics tool that I use, June, allows you to do that. So you can just enter any event and you can see exactly their adoption and retention metrics. So then you can plot them on such a quadrant. Now, the features that are in the top right corner, which is marked blue right now, that have both high adoption and high retention, they are likely to be your product's aha moments, right? It could be that there are some features that are aha moments for some user segments, but not for others. It could be that they are just more important to some segments and not at all important to other segments, or maybe some segments just haven't uncovered them yet, so there's something to explore there. But generally, the stuff that is here is kind of the core value of your product. Then we also have features in the bottom right corner, which show high adoption but low retention. There are some features that just fall there because they have a low natural frequency. For example, if you allow users to configure an email report, right? So that instead of they have to go into your interface to look at data, they just get it sent to their email address. They're probably going to use that once, right? They configure their email address and then they're done with it. So it has a low natural frequency. But in other cases, it can also be, if you're expecting a higher natural frequency, it can be that the feature is kind of disappointing. A lot of people tried it once, but they never came back to it. In that case, not a good sign. And then we have the features in the top left corner that have low adoption but high retention. This is interesting, right? This represents a growth opportunity. So you can experiment with driving more users to this feature. So kind of make it more obvious, for example, in your first product walkthrough, or giving it its own menu item, kind of making it a lot more visible, and check whether that drives, whether these other users who are now also adopting it are also retaining as well as the first ones, right? Because it could be, again, that this feature is not an equally good fit for every segment. And then we have the features in the bottom left corner, which have low adoption and low retention. Probably not good, right? This is not a good sign. It might be that this is a good candidate for sunsetting, meaning that you kind of kill off the feature. But before you do that, you should, of course, ask yourself, did we attract the right users into the product? Were they likely to be successful in the first place, or did we have some kind of misalignment, for example, between sales and product or marketing and product? You wouldn't be the first. And of course, were the new users even aware of these features? You could have very low adoption and low retention data because nobody knew that the feature even existed. This is also quite common. As always, combining all of these quantitative insights from data with qualitative knowledge, qualitative insights from like user interviews or shadowing sessions or moderated user tests or unmoderated user tests, this will help you a lot, right? Because otherwise you're just looking at numbers. There's a lot of room for interpretation there. If you flesh that out with qualitative data, you'll be able to make much better decisions. Good luck.